Can we kick off this podcast today with just a classic story? We're going to start now. We're just going to roll into this.
Okay, I might not name the person, but I'll
You
tell
don't
the
have to name,
story.
but this is a fantastic story I heard at SaaS Connect from Ashley. So, welcome to the Conversion Show. Today we have Ashley Scorpio, SVP of Revenue at Levitate Foundry. It is the largest female founded Shopify Plus agency partner in North America, that's really cool. So congratulations for joining that. But let's start with this story. Is this story that is straight out of the show Silicon Valley?
Straight out of the Bay. Yeah, so funny story. My sister and I have sibling dogs that are litter mates. So they have the same parents and the same birthday. They're from the same litter. And the way that came about is my sister is actually a Bay Area based entrepreneur. And she was fundraising at the time. This is many years ago. My dog is now 11 years old. So when they were wee little puppies, there was a particular investor in the Bay Area who wanted to lead one of the series rounds in my sister's company. And so one of the ways to sweeten the pot and to make sure their fund came out on top and led the round was to gift her two puppies and myself a puppy and her lead engineer a puppy and one of her friends as well, who's a founder of another Bay Area startup. So yeah, funny story because it's definitely something that you could see or definitely foresee in a show like Silicon Valley. And also odd part of my own little, Canadian and California and the US story. I actually did appear on an episode of Silicon Valley briefly. Yeah, in the episode Daily Active Users, when they are workshopping the whole concept and they're doing focus groups. I'm the person that ultimately leads the main character to despair by walking out on his pitch. And he tries to, invoke pizza and that everyone loves pizza. And no dice, at least not for my on-screen persona. And so that was also a pretty funny segue as well.
I remember your story got even crazier. Wasn't there like second dog trying to didn't you want to get more dogs into the mix or something?
I mean, I love dogs. Outside of marketing, in the US, I'm definitely known for marketing in SaaS and in e-commerce and on the agency side. In Canada, I'm certainly known for politics, but just as a human, I'm definitely known as an animal lover and certainly a dog mom. I spend a lot of my time with dogs. My phone easily has over 5,000 pictures of dogs on it. So
My wife's sister-in-law was just in San Francisco at a trade show, which is where I saw you last. And one of the booths had puppies, and it's this company that essentially that's their gig. You can contract a company to bring puppies to your booth. And it was a total hit. It was a huge hit.
Genius. Move over, booth babes. We didn't want that anyway, right? As a woman in marketing who's also been in that position of pitching on the show floor, bring on the puppies, bring on a pack of puppies, and hopefully they're adoptable rescues.
Yeah, and then percentage of their proceeds of the actual business actually goes to support the different, I'm not sure which program it was, but like we're a big rescue dog. We have 2 rescue dogs in our family. But it goes into that story, which we can kind of now segue why people are here to hear about the current trends in conversion, the foundation of it is your customer experience and understanding your customers. And like you said, like people don't want booth babes. They're not going to remember that. People walked away remembering these puppies, sharing these photos of these puppies because they understood their customer and embraced it, engaged it. And it was awesome. They brought home it was the TY, what's the TY little stuffed animals?
Oh, the Beanie Babies.
Beanie Babies, is that what they are? Yeah, they gave away little Beanie Babies. So that was
cute.
Kids, which also goes back to, small side note is Yadpo had baby socks one year at IRCE, and I 5 years later, I still have them. They're on my kids now. I mean, it's just super smart things anyhow. So
I love a practical swag giveaway. Socks are actually one of my favorite items to receive from partners for sure. But you raise a really good point about customer experience. And also, I'd say making those memories and it being about experiences, especially millennials are extremely interested in an experience and not just an item. So to have sort of gifting or an experience baked in is a big way we see conversions. Another one I would say is, when we're thinking about buy one, give one, or a donation based model or a nonprofit model baked in, I immediately think of the OG in the space, Tom's, right? Like the buy one, give one model. And so I think, especially when it comes to Gen Z, they're very conscientious consumers, generally speaking, as a demographic, especially when it comes to sustainability and eco-friendly. And I think it's more important than ever to have that sort of corporate social responsibility baked into your brand, especially if you're trying to reach younger demographics and generations, because it's something that they're very much paying attention to.
so there's a trend right there. Shopping gives, eco cart. Are you seeing those type of app partners that you work with kind of trending up?
Absolutely. And I've been partnered with both Shopping Gives and EcoCart for many years. Full disclosure, I am an investor in EcoCart because I do strongly believe in sustainability and that mission. And I particularly like the way that they've gone about things. But again, as someone in the space, I am agnostic and we partner with everyone. And like I said, have also been working with Shopping Gives for many years. I have seen definitely an uptick, particularly around this time of year, with Earth Day and Earth Month. So this is definitely the time of year. There is obviously a lot of seasonality when it comes to e-commerce and shopping. We see that on retail calendars, traditional retail calendars. When is the best time to buy a mattress or a barbecue or swimwear? Or, Black Friday might be the best time of year to buy electronics or kitchen appliances. So there is definitely a lot of seasonality beyond the typical, snow boots, winter gear, and let's say bikini season. So I do think that's something that you see around this time of year as well. We're talking right now in May. So that's quite common. But generally speaking, I think, again, as the purchasing power of Gen Z continues to rise beyond just their influencing power that they're having perhaps on their Gen X parents and beyond, I think those are definitely tools that we've seen a massive uptick in. I know particularly amongst our clients at Levitate Foundry, we did also do a promotion for Earth Month with EcoCart specifically. And so I do know a number of our clients and the brands we support were really eager to take advantage of that.
Shipping is such a critical component of the customer experience that I think has been overlooked completely up until recently. And, even like Amazon finally was like, oh, hey, you can get these at a, delay shipping, and we'll try to put them in group them in boxes. But that's just half of it. It's the materials. I actually really appreciate when I like baby diapers, when we order those, when they just slap the sticker on the box, the Pampers box, and it arrives, without all the extra stuff. What refresh the audience on, since we are talking about EcoCart, all disclosures out. I think it's a fantastic company and concept. What's some examples of brands leveraging that, like with the Earth Day sale? What were they just promoting the fact that, hey, this packaging is going to be sustainable, or what's the breakdown there?
So specifically when it comes to EcoCart, a lot of the brands we're talking about offering carbon neutral shipping or offsetting their shipping. So it would be carbon neutral. So a lot of people are thinking about their own impact when it comes to their impact on the planet. We've seen similar things in other spaces too, where people sometimes calculate, particularly pre-pandemic, and I'm sure we'll see a resurgence of this now that a lot of leisure travel has resumed. Some people are calculating their carbon footprint based on their own amount of time they spend in the air or on trains and planes. And so, I think we've seen people offset their carbon footprint based on their flight credits and their mileage flown. And so similarly, this is kind of what we're seeing EcoCart facilitate in e-commerce when it comes to carbon neutral shipping. But to touch on your point of packaging, again, full disclosure, I am an investor in Arca, but Arca specifically offers sustainable, eco-friendly packaging. So that would come down to, like you said, the devil is in the details. How much packing material are we using? What is the packing material made out of? How is it being sourced? Has it been reused or repurposed? One of the things Amazon, as obviously the elephant in the room of e-commerce in any room or warehouse, has primed consumers for prime shipping, not only in the sense of speed and urgency, but they also have done something in this area too, and I feel like it's a little known, often overlooked feature, but individuals can go into their individual Amazon account and set their preferences specifically for less packaging, to your point, so that it'll come oftentimes in the original box for the product, as opposed to being put into an additional cardboard box. So I highly encourage anyone who has not selected that feature to go ahead and do so. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways we as consumers can be more conscientious in our consumption. And similarly, on the brand side, brand owners and brand operators and marketers can think about what they're putting out in the world in their own marketing campaigns and about their brand, how they're telling that story, and how they're hopefully holding up their end of the bargain of any story they might be telling and the realities on the ground and in the warehouse.
So that's where the story comes in and the on-site website experience. How is that being communicated, with your clients? How do you communicate that to their customers?
So many different ways. So when we're talking about on-site, at Levitate Foundry, we specifically offer conversion rate optimization as a service. We can either do a full-blown conversion rate optimization project and a full-on audit of the entire site. We can also offer it as an ongoing service. And that can look like a lot of different things. That could look at, let's say, product page descriptions, right? And ensuring we're using high quality, engaging, and perhaps lifestyle imagery. Perhaps it's also about how fresh the content is. If we're specifically talking about telling the story, you'd be surprised by how many brands don't have an about us or an our story section. Simple, no brainer. Similarly, building off that, if that's table stakes, perhaps you have an about us or an our story or about the founders or whatever part of the story you want to tell, whether it's the mission, whether it's the product, whether it's the problem you're solving, whether it's how it'll make the consumer or their loved ones feel if they're gifting it. You might want to build on that with a blog, right? I'd say ever since the iOS 14.5 changes that we've seen in the past 2+ years in e-commerce and generally online across digital marketing channels, the owned and earned channels have been more important than ever. So on-site SEO should not be slept on, right? Having a consistent blog with high quality content, perhaps informative information, backlinks, etc., extremely important. Similarly, having a robust FAQ section, right? Again, it's the sort of thing that could build trust, knowing that the brand has thought about these commonly asked questions, has proactively provided this information. When we think about a conversion funnel or we think about the customer journey, even before they've converted, right? There's sort of the branding and awareness phase at the top of the funnel. There's the consideration phase in the mid funnel. And then hopefully there's that conversion at the bottom of the funnel. And again, that's not the end of the loop. Hopefully this is a virtuous cycle and we continue to rinse, reuse, repeat, and refill the funnel with retention, which we can definitely talk about in a minute. But when it comes to conversion, that mid funnel, there's a lot of consideration that goes into it. Sometimes I would call it homework. A lot of customers, especially millennials onward, have been more prone to doing homework. That might be a simple Google search. That might be reading reviews, whether they're on site or in marketplaces or on other blogs. That might be consuming content by creators or others online about the product or service or offering. And so the more information you are putting out there on your own site, the better. In politics, we would talk about this us on us versus us on them versus them on us. Right? What are you saying about your own brand or products? What are your competitors saying about you? What are other people saying about you? So at the end of the day, who is best positioned to tell your brand story? You are, you and your team. So, take the bull by the horns and ideally have a really robust section on site about who you are, what you stand for. If there's a give back, if there's a value add, if there's a sustainability angle, etc.
I'm just going to pause there because we just got a nice lesson from Ashley on what I like to call the basics. Like, if you think about it, before we do all this fancy, crazy stuff, are we covering the basics? And when, especially with DTC brands, maybe they're scrolling their phone late night on Instagram and they see this new cool thing, like, this looks legit. You click on it. That's where it's really important to tell the story of how this product came about, who's behind it, what they believe in, speaking to the new, the Gen Z and what they're interested in more than just a product. Who are they buying from? They're going to wear it, use it, talk about it with their friends. It represents who they are. I love the homework analogy because it is true. It's also looking at the truths of what happens today. Is that if this brand hasn't built the trust yet with you, they haven't communicated that shipping, they understand how important shipping is. They understand returns can be a pain and people want to make sure that's real. Who are they doing business with? Do they give back, etc.? Well, if you haven't communicated that to your visitor, I'm an Apple Tea, Amazon product, know I can get it free shipping next day or two. And right there, you lose the zero and first party data if you haven't collected it through that process. In terms of, this Gen Z profile, I mean, you touched on a lot of great things here, the story page. Are there any other, what else does the Gen Z care about? When you're on a website, what's those other like basic miscellaneous things you're seeing opportunities we like call the low hanging fruit when you look at a client's website, you're like, why aren't you doing this, like, where's the video? Come on.
Definitely. So I completely agree with you. It's all about blocking and tackling and nailing those basics first and foremost, and laying that foundation for a successful user journey on site, and then building from there. So a couple things I would also say, you mentioned shipping and returns. That's a big piece of it because we are primed for fast, free shipping. That's the number one thing, is you should offer free shipping if you can. And a lot of brands and business owners, especially smaller brands, perhaps just starting out, think, oh no, I can't offer free shipping. I can't afford to eat that cost. Well, if you haven't baked it into your margins or thought about it in that sense, perhaps you raise your price and offer free shipping. And we've noticed that little bit, even though ultimately it ends up being the same price, removes that layer of friction at checkout where shipping is calculated. So that's a very simple one that you might not think would make a difference, because at the end of the day, you might say that doesn't make sense. It's the same price. It's being presented in a different way. So if your product is also high quality, and hopefully you have the reviews and the testimonials to also back that up and make the case for that, people are willing to pay a little more or a premium, especially if they know that there's, let's say, free shipping and free returns. And, you touched on returns. I think, again, very clearly communicating the return policy in your FAQ section is a big one, because you are building that trust. You are setting those expectations. You, of course, need to deliver, right? If anything, again, building on my past in politics, you want to under promise and over deliver. So in a worst case scenario, let's say, we saw this in the early parts of the pandemic. A lot of shipping and logistics chains failed. A lot of production stalled for obvious reasons. And so in a worst case scenario, you need to be proactive and communicate with your customers. So customer service itself is extremely important. There's obviously a lot of things you might want to consider, whether that's people, whether that's a chatbot on site or through Messenger or other channels that make sense for your target demographic. But yeah, having very clear avenues of communication to be reached should an issue occur. Being proactive if you realize something might be brewing, whether or not it's confirmed, I think is appreciated. And similarly, if you have, let's say, a first-time buyer, first-time customer, and they make their first product purchase with you, and let's say it's something like apparel or footwear, which very commonly might come down to fit. right? So this is why on-site information is extremely important. Do you have a size guide? Do you have reviews and testimonials that specifically talk about whether it's as expected, true to size, smaller than expected, larger than expected, etc.? Do you have more data points for that for people to extrapolate off of? Do you have product imagery, perhaps, of different sizes of models wearing your apparel, let's say? A great example of one of our clients who does really well with this that I love is MeUndies. They will typically say the model's height and perhaps sometimes their weight and what size of the product they are wearing. And you can visually see how the garment is falling or fitting on their body type based on the dimensions you've been provided. So, that's just one example that I think works particularly well. But just to close out this piece of it, let's say, God forbid, a first-time customer orders a pair of shoes and they don't fit and they need to return them. That is not the worst case scenario. You can actually turn a return into a great experience. If the return is easy and seamless and fast and free, chances are you've still won a net new customer. Perhaps that particular transaction didn't work out, but they're more likely to come back to you. But if they purchase from you, especially for the first time, and it was a bad experience overall through and through, they're probably not coming back.
Well, that gets to your lifecycle marketing and retention, and that's where e-commerce brands, they need to understand it's a organic system where every department needs to be working together to ensure that customer has the greatest experience possible. I always say customer experience equals, or CS equals, sales and marketing. Because you're touching on MeUndies, and a lot of the information about sizing can also come from reviews. The reviewers, and another great way to collect zero and first party data is when someone writes a review, you can extrapolate more data from your customer. But most importantly, it provides your own customers the information they're looking for. So even you can have your size chart, but if someone reads review and they're like, oh, this person's 5'8", 165, and it says true to size, or like whatever, it's like, okay, I found that person. And each visitor has a different experience. The other thing with returns is, just by saying free returns these days, I don't feel is enough, because again, Amazon has done some phenomenal things, and it's very fair to use them as an opportunity to figure out how do we take the Amazon experience and apply it to standalone e-commerce businesses. And it's the trend is happening with all the apps available and everything, but you have to know, what is the foundation, and what are the apps for it? Returns, even if they're free, they're still a pain. Like, I don't own a printer. I don't know about you, but
me either.
Gen Z doesn't even own laptops. You think they own a printer? So if you expect them to, no joke, I'm so fortunate I've moved back to my hometown and my parents live 3 minutes away. Both wife and I, we email my dad UPS slips to print out for us to return things. And that's the reality of today. And retailers need to understand, they need to communicate what the full experience is going to be. Otherwise, like I've not, another reason why I've Apple T'd Amazon is I don't want to deal with returns. Like, remove that risk,
friction.
The friction.
It's friction. It's a friction point. And when there's too much friction, what do we get? We get a fire that burns, and it burns down that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, the vast majority of millennials, and certainly Gen Z, do not own printers, certainly not at home. I think one of the running memes ever since the pandemic is that, since a lot of people are working from home or still working remotely or have moved to a remote first life, they've lost access to the in-office printer, which is where perhaps they might have printed things in the past.
Well, in the past too, the mailroom, you could pay for shipping, when you had to pay for shipping. Some people may have used the company's UPS, FedEx account.
Completely possible, certainly frowned upon and not encouraged, but completely possible. I think those are things to think about. I know a good number of brands, e-commerce brands, offer a prepaid shipping label that they send to you with a bag for the return to be packaged in. So I think that's a great way to go about it. Even for me, for example, even with those Amazon returns you were mentioning, I personally typically just do the barcode, and I just screenshot the barcode and then I drop off to, let's say, a UPS store. And that way, again, I'm also saving trees and saving paper without having to print anything at all. And moreover, in a lot of times when you're doing a UPS drop off, you can eliminate the packaging because they actually bulk everything at the store, which is an interesting model too.
Is there the experience you just mentioned, which is correct, it's all digital, it's great, is what's available for retailers themselves to try to replicate that experience? Are there any, and who's available? No one?
I would say the closest thing would be either those prepaid labels that you send, so it's door to door with a drop off, or perhaps if they set up their own. And I think this would probably have to be based on volume. So it would probably have to be a larger brand or retailer that would set up their own sort of arrangement with UPS similarly. However, based on UPS's relationship with Amazon, although Amazon has also now, as we've seen, started to take their own tact where they're taking shipping and logistics into their own hands very much, not only for their own products like Amazon Basics, but all the FBA fulfilled by Amazon items as well. So yeah, I think there might be friction there because UPS is already losing out on big pieces of that account. And they're probably eager to retain the rest of the business that they can. So there may or may not be some sort of a non-compete at a larger scale. Obviously, I can't speak to those businesses because I'm not privy to the inner workings of their relationships. But yeah, I would say some of the things that some of the brands that we work with love to leverage are things like Loop or Happy Returns. There are partners that offer services around this. There's also, on a similar tangent, there's also try before you buy options as well. So instead of paying upfront and then only being reimbursed after, let's say, the return is received back by the brand, you would only be charged after a certain window of having decided to keep the items. So it kind of flips that whole model on its head, but it certainly removes even more of the friction out of the purchase cycle and the purchase decision.
I took notes on those too. I think this sector is really going to be interesting to watch as we look at customer experience moving forward.
Yes, and I think we saw a lot of this initially with the installment payments when it comes to that bottom funnel checkout stage, right? And I think things to think about there are shipping, taxes, if there's duty or customs, if it's coming from abroad, if there's additional charges for shipping or fast shipping, if you have to meet a certain minimum for the free shipping to qualify for it. But yeah, I would say the other thing that others have leveraged are those buy now, pay later solutions. And there are obviously a plethora of those as well. However, as we've seen in the US with lots of different other alternative financial solutions across different industries, like crypto, oftentimes there are regulatory things to be aware of that could perhaps potentially impact those types of offerings and businesses. So I think buy now, pay later was a really big thing, especially with Gen Z. I think it's being somewhat scrutinized, at least by lawmakers, although it's still probably somewhat popular amongst consumers. And I think now there's the alternative option, like a try now, pay later. If that's more accessible, perhaps for the brand.
Well, as we move into the next chapter of customer experience is the payment. Again, looking at the Amazon experience, you show up, you're already logged in. Takes one click to check out. There's been a lot of work to replicate that experience with Shopify Shop Pay, Google Checkout. Are you seeing those be embraced by your clients?
Yes, Shop Pay is definitely a big one. As the largest female founded and led Shopify Plus preferred agency partner in North America, obviously the vast majority of the brands and businesses that we work with and support are on Shopify Core or Shopify Plus. So they're within that ecosystem. So it's quite common for them to leverage any of the Shopify options. Another hot topic right now is Shopify shipping and fulfillment as well. Because we've touched on logistics quite a bit in this conversation. Shop Pay is a big one. I also think for the consumer, that feeds into that customer experience you were talking about.
100%.
Because if you leverage Shop Pay as the user and you have the app, you also see in real time the tracking and the fulfillment of your order and your products and where they are and when you can expect them. So I do think that is one that we've seen implemented quite frequently. I think the other thing that we've been talking about within this space for many years is mobile first web design. And similarly, so if you have a mobile checkout, one, everything needs to look right and fit on a smaller screen than on a desktop. Again, this should go without say, but you'd be surprised. And similarly, you mentioned Google Pay. That brings into question as well Apple Pay, especially if people are shopping from their iPhones.
Bolt.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you seeing? So mobile is, especially D2C. I mean, we're looking at 70% numbers of their consumers are on mobile.
Easily.
Obviously, much higher or much lower sales conversion rates on mobile, which obviously it's new and there's great opportunity to improve that low hanging fruit. But as you're looking at strategies, as you're sitting down with clients, are your clients recognizing this and being like, oh, we need to divert resources towards this?
Absolutely. So, at Levitate Foundry, we not only do performance marketing, but we also do design and development, UX, UI, creative, motion design, etc. That's the big part of our e-commerce practice. And so, when we are building sites, we're not thinking about optimizing for mobile. We're thinking about building mobile first. Similarly, the other thing that a lot of brands are thinking about is ensuring their load speed times are appropriate. Again, if your site isn't loading in less than 3 seconds, you're losing a big core of your prospective audience that will have at that point already bounced off site. And so similarly, you want to make sure that it's loading appropriately on mobile and quickly. Another thing on site, as far as optimizations go, that has been pretty popular in the past few years, and again, I think is not only about the customer experience and the customer relationship and building trust, it's also about compliance. But certainly it's the right thing to do is to ensure your site is accessible. So we sometimes think about accessibility in physical spaces. We perhaps don't always consider accessibility in digital spaces. This will probably become more and more of a topic over time as we continue to see AR and VR take off, in whether that's in e-commerce or in other applications. And so, I think it's important to ensure that your site, whether it's on desktop or mobile, is ADA compliant in the US. Not only so that you are up to code, as it were, but also so you are inclusive and not alienating a potential entire segment of the population that might want to engage with your brand and purchase from you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. It wouldn't be a Zoom
without
somebody going on or off mute.
I was just saying it's such a great point, and it goes into having empathy for your customers, understanding what their needs are today, and every single customer is different. There's commonalities, but that's where it gets into the personalization and respecting your visitors, their time, who they are, and creating that experience for them.
I couldn't
go for it.
Just building off that, I couldn't agree more. And two things before we end up on a totally different tangent. Another thing when it comes to mobile is because people are spending more time on their phones, SMS, obviously as a channel. And similarly, when you're talking about their behaviors and personalization, we think about triggers. On-site triggers, right? And so we love Justuno specifically for capture. It's one of the primary tools that we use when we're looking to capture emails and phone numbers for SMS specifically. And again, people might not realize that you should test different types of triggers for your pop-up. Again, if the very first thing that you see when you land on a site is a pop-up and you can't see anything else without surrendering your information, that might feel invasive or overreaching to some prospective customers. It might be fine for others. However, the good news is with a tool like Justuno, you can obviously test multiple different behaviors, triggers, and intention. Perhaps you do an exit intention pop-up rather than just landing on site. But again, these are all things that brands and businesses should think about and test.
Well, as we talk about the basics and the foundation, is that me as, and we've been doing this for, Justuno itself for 12 years. And I feel like we're in this new evolution of like really understanding what needs to be in the product. And it's, you go to a site, I don't care about 10% right now because you haven't earned my trust yet. Why aren't we talking about this package if you buy today, it will ship today in a countdown timer. We know you're in this zone, like it will arrive to you by this date. Does that sound good? Do you want to continue on here? Oh, by the way, we're going to guarantee you the best price. And as a competitive advantage, we own our product and we're going to give you a special free gift. Or if you're not ready today, sign up for a giveaway of our product. And now we have your email, which is a known channel. I mean, where we are, we're still in the infancy of understanding, like you said, the digital space. Bring in, if you think about it, search recently hit my radar. And if you think about search and merchandising, product recommendation, back in the day in retail, the most popular teams to be on, let's say at Gap, was the merchandising team. Because you would come into stores, be the cool kids that like make sure the store is all dialed in. Are you seeing search, as in you arrive on a site and, people are using the search bars? I feel like it's this crazy overlooked opportunity.
I can absolutely. Again, there's nothing but opportunity. It also depends if you only sell one product, perhaps search isn't as important. But if you have a plethora of inventory and different SKUs, search is probably extremely important. Another thing that might be important are your categories. Another thing that you also might want to consider are bundles and bundling some of your products, whether that's via subscription or otherwise. Similarly, there's suggested products. So if you're on a specific product page for an item, are there other suggested products that make a lot of sense to go with that item as an upsell or a cross-sell, if you will? So yes, search is huge. I think it's definitely overlooked, especially with brands. We work with some clients that have over 10,000 SKUs. Search is critically important at that point. If you have the product that the person is looking for, but they can't find it, it doesn't matter. So not only should the entire site be optimized for search engines, not only should everything be tagged appropriately, but the function on your own site, searching within your site, should be optimized and should be well thought out.
So let's wind down here. But of course, I'm going to introduce a couple things here for time's sake.
Of course.
I just had John Roman on from BattleBox, and you mentioned bundles. And I like to ask, hey, what's one thing that's really like super excited about that's like crushing it? And then I like to ask and if you could just pause and just focus 1 week on one thing, what would it be? And they added a surprise. BattleBox is this subscription service with these adventure outdoor, really cool boxes. On the checkout, they have a surprise box, and it was like $49.99, I think. They had like a 40% acceptance of that surprise box, so their AOV instantly shot up. He's super exciting to hear. And the second one is he's going to be focused. He would love to just freeze everything and focus on his product pages. For you, obviously, you're not hands-on managing, one business, but how can we relate that question to you? If you were able to just this week stop everyone and be like, please, can we focus here just for 1 week? Where would that be?
Absolutely on the retention marketing side of things. So because the owned and earned channels are more important than ever, because of the rising cost per action across all of those other traditional digital advertising channels, it is more cost efficient and more effective to spend your time, energy, money, resources on retaining existing customers than it is to acquire net new customers. That's not to say you shouldn't do both and have a healthy mix. You, of course, need to refill the funnel from a variety of sources to keep things flowing and keep them going and moving along. But as we continue to see, the vast majority of e-commerce brands see at least 40% of their total revenue from just their email channel. And we've seen even higher numbers on SMS in the past 2 years. Some brands are hesitant to test or try SMS. They think, depending on who they are, their own demographic, perhaps their own preconceived notions or their own personal use cases, they don't think people want to hear from brands on SMS. That's simply not true. You also give people the option, right? I also think it's important to survey your customers. So you are personalizing how they hear from you, how often they hear from you, where they hear from you, what they hear from you. Do you want marketing? Do you want promotions? Do you want product launches, etc.? Giving people the option. That's that Z and zero party data, right? Ask people and they might tell you. Surveys are a great way to do this. But basically, if I could tell every brand or business owner, operator to stop and look, it would be to pull out a magnifying glass and make sure that they had their ducks in a row when it comes to any of their marketing and automation efforts on lifecycle channels. So if they don't have the appropriate flows and automations set up on email, whether that's a win-back campaign, whether that's a cart abandonment campaign, etc., a refer a friend campaign, they are absolutely leaving revenue on the table. It's like they have a hole in their pocket. And
I call it the hole in the ship. It's like, hey, we got to go patch some holes here. We got some leaks.
Yeah, there you go. We're on the same page here, or I guess I should say we're on or in the same boat.
Yeah. So you heard it there, retention marketing. Right.
Hands
there.
down. No question. And people who know me might think that this is ironic because anyone who knows me knows that my background in marketing, I'm actually, certified media buyer on many different channels. So, I'm telling you this hands down, and I really mean it because it's not even my specialty within marketing. It's that important.
Yep. And, it goes into, you talk about own channels and it's the most efficient way to grow your business. And to do that, you have to also win them over by creating a customer experience that they're willing to come back to. And the whole, it's one big organic loop that leadership in the companies need to understand and be all in on and push and drive the company to have that mindset of, a customer first company all the way through to the point of having, shipping puts a sticker for your brand inside the box, something as small as that. So
100%. And I know you mentioned Amazon earlier when it came to customer experience, but even Amazon took cues from the late, great Tony Hsieh, the former CEO of Zappos. And that's certainly probably a big reason why Amazon decided to acquire Zappos. And, if you're familiar with Tony and his work or any of his writings, you would know that he even tested his own customer service operators at Zappos by calling them late night, asking to order him a pizza in Santa Monica when they're based also here in Las Vegas. And of course they came through. And so, everything should be about putting the customer first. You mentioned empathy for your customer. Quite frankly, if you don't care about your customer, you shouldn't be in business. So perhaps that's a hot take. That's certainly my opinion. But you should lead with empathy within your organization and with your brand and your products and your values. And hopefully, you're bringing a great product or service to market for people because you care about them and you want to make their lives better.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Tony Hsieh, which is such a sad story. I think Delivering Happiness was his book that he wrote. We when we were running our e-commerce business in 2008, I think we toured their Las Vegas facility, and we walking through the customer service team. It was really cool how they actually pointed out that the first week that you joined the company, you would spend on chat, to really learn and understand, the rest of the company, and that really, his book, everything really led the directive for the whole company and the culture, which then also makes me think about Yvon Chouinard and like Let My People Go Surfing. That wasn't just the people, that's just like a company ethos, a company culture all around. There's so many great, inspiring people that have been doing this, but it's taking forever to adopt, but we're getting there.
100%. And, I had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with Tony. One of the big reasons why I chose Las Vegas, of all places, to move from LA. A lot of people ask me that question. And, anyone who hasn't read Delivering Happiness absolutely should. And if you've read Delivering Happiness, you should check out Beyond Happiness, written by Jen Lim, a longtime collaborator of Tony Hsieh, who also was the chief happiness officer of the Delivering Happiness nonprofit. So really, walking the talk for that sort of ethos and building culture within organizations.
That's why I love doing these podcasts. I get to some little tidbits. My new book, Beyond Happiness, I'm going to add that to Audible. Well,
absolutely fantastic book. Highly recommend it to anyone. And, Jen is also a great podcast speaker. So.
Ashley, thank you so much. Ashley is joining us from LevitateFoundry.com, correct?
That's right.
All right. Please check them out. Obviously, you can just Google Ashley Scorpio. You'll get her whole background. It's quite robust and impressive. And we have more coming down the pipeline here. So please subscribe. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for joining us, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
All right, cool. Have a good day.